I never meant to disappear, but the moment I found out the truth, I realized I had never truly been seen. My name is Nora Wexler, and this story begins on a day I thought I'd never return. The ranch house sat at the edge of Austin, wrapped in sun-stained wood and memories that used to mean something. I hadn't been back in over a year, not because I didn't want to, but because they told me there was no reason to, that no one was left. As I stepped out of my car, the wind chimes clinked with a sound that once felt like a lullaby of summer. Now it felt like something haunting. Distant, office. The front door creaked open. No hug, no smile, just a voice, sharp, rusted, unmistakable. So you finally decided to show up. It was Grandma Ruth, arms crossed, eyes like steel. I stopped in my tracks, my voice caught in my throat. I was told you were in a nursing home, that Grandpa... Don't, she said, raising one frail but firm hand. That single motion felt louder than any scream. Her words stung. Not just because of the accusation, but because of the grief buried in them. Your grandfather, he called your name Nora, over and over. On his last night, said, "Where's my little scientist?" But you never came. That's not true, I whispered. They never told me he was sick. They said you both moved, that no one was allowed to visit. Her eyes softened, only slightly. A flicker of doubt danced across her face, and then she disappeared into the house. When she returned, she handed me a notepad, edges worn, ink faded. My heart sank when I saw the number Grandpa had been calling. It wasn't mine, not even close. I've had the same number since college, I said, the air pulling from my lungs. They lied to you. Something broke then, not between us, but behind us, like the veil of a carefully crafted fiction suddenly torn down. I gripped the porch railing, and for a moment, I didn't feel 30 years old. I felt like a child again, one who had just been erased from her own story. Grandma stood still for a moment, then motioned me to follow her inside. The living room was exactly as I remembered, down to the faded cushion Grandpa always claimed as his thinking throne. But the air was heavier now. Not dusty, dense, like it held back everything that had gone unsaid. She walked to the kitchen wall and picked up the landline phone. Her hands trembled slightly as she dialed, but her voice, when it came, was all steel again. "Betty, it's Ruth. I need you, Jacob, and Vanessa here. Now." "No, not later, within the hour." She hung up without saying goodbye, then turned to me. "The lawyer's on his way too. Your grandfather left some instructions. He wanted them read out loud, with everyone present." I blinked. "Instructions?" She nodded. "A letter, and a will." I didn't ask why she hadn't told me sooner. Maybe she wasn't ready, or maybe she needed to see me first, to look me in the eye and decide if I still belonged. An hour passed like a lifetime. I waited in the kitchen, where Grandpa used to read popular science over oatmeal and black coffee. The clock ticked too loudly. My fingers itched to touch something familiar. His books, his notes, anything. But I stayed still. Through the wall, voices started to trickle in. My mom, overly bright. My dad, smooth and hollow. And Vanessa, her voice curled in boredom like always. Then silence, followed by Grandma's voice, clear and cutting. "Please, take a seat. Mr. Callan Reeves is here to read David's will." That was my cue. I walked into the living room. 3 heads snapped in my direction like I'd triggered an alarm. My mother's smile cracked. My father's face drained of color. Vanessa blinked hard, like trying to reboot a dream gone wrong. I said nothing, just stood beside Grandma as Mr. Reeves opened his briefcase. Inside was a thick envelope, not the kind that just held legal instructions, the kind that held revelations. "I, David Wexler, being of sound mind, do hereby declare this to be my final will and testament." The room froze. You could feel everyone holding their breath. Mr. Reeves continued, "To my beloved wife, Ruth Wexler, I leave our family home and a lifelong financial provision for her care and comfort. No one reacted. Grandma already knew. To my granddaughter, Nora Wexler, I leave the newly constructed Wexler Research Facility, located at 482 Pine Ridge Lane, including all equipment, intellectual property rights, and operating funds. A sharp inhale from Dad, a twitch in Mom's cheek, and then, "You've got to be kidding me," Vanessa spat, rising from her seat. "The lab? You gave her the entire lab?" But Mr. Reeves didn't pause. "And the remainder of my estate shall be divided equally between my two granddaughters, Nora and Vanessa Wexler." Silence hit the floor like a dropped vase. You could almost hear it shatter. Vanessa's voice cracked. "No, that's not how this was supposed to go." She turned to Mom and Dad, eyes wide, lips trembling. "You said everything would be mine. If I just visited him, said the right things, played nice." I stood frozen. They'd made her perform for an inheritance. And she'd agreed. For a second, nobody moved. Vanessa was still standing, her fists clenched so tight her knuckles were white. I could see it now. Her whole life had been a script, rehearsed for applause that never came. But this wasn't a stage, and Grandpa had written his own ending. "There's more," Grandma said. Her voice was calm, but there was something electric under the surface, something alive. She reached into the drawer beside her and pulled out a folded letter. Its edges were worn, but her grip on it was firm, like it carried the last breath of a man who refused to be silenced. David wanted this read aloud too. Mr. Reeves took the letter with a slight bow of respect. He unfolded it slowly, carefully, like holding something sacred. Then he began. "To my dearest Nora, if you are hearing this, I'm no longer beside you, but I hope my voice finds you where love still lives." The room shrank, or maybe it was just me, collapsing inward as his words filled the space I didn't know I'd left so empty. "You were never the loudest, never the easiest, but you were always the one who listened to the world, who noticed things, who never stopped asking why." My breath caught. I didn't look at anyone else. I didn't need to. This was between Grandpa and me. I watched them, your parents, Vanessa, try to shape you into something simpler, something quieter, and I hated how often you let them. A tear slipped down my cheek. But even when you hid your light, you never let it go out. You read books in closets. You tracked the growth of my sunflowers like a scientist. You built a world where you were safe, even if they never understood it. I could feel the stares burning holes in my skin. Nora, you were never a disappointment. You were my legacy. That lab is yours, not because you're smarter, but because you saw, you cared. When they laughed, you observed. When they left, you stayed. He paused for a moment, almost as if his handwriting had taken a breath. Vanessa played a role. You lived a life. That's the difference. And I hope this letter reminds you that your voice was always worth hearing, even when they tried to drown it out. By the time the letter ended, the silence was painful. Then Vanessa snapped. "This is insane," she shouted. "She wasn't even here. She vanished. I was the one who took care of him. I was the one who sat by his bed." "You were the one who posed beside him for the holiday photos," I said quietly. She froze. "You smiled. You visited. But you never saw him. Not the way I did." Vanessa's rage twisted into something sharper. Shame, guilt, no, just more anger. "Don't act like you're better than me. You left." "No," I said, steady now. "I was locked out." Mom stood. "Enough. This is not the time to what? Expose the truth?" I turned to her. "You told me they'd been moved, that they were unreachable. You said I should focus on school while Grandpa was dying." Dad adjusted his collar, like it would hide the discomfort on his face. "Nora, be reasonable. You already had your education. All those science programs, the travel, the lab equipment. Do you know how much that cost us?" I blinked. My voice dropped to a razor edge. "You didn't pay for any of it. Grandpa did. Every plane ticket, every microscope, every camp, he supported me. You just claimed the credit. Mum's face hardened. Vanessa needs this more. She's building her future. She's building a narrative, Grandma cut in sharply. Everyone turned. You manipulated a dying man, she said, voice low but dangerous. You made promises, you lied, and worst of all, you made Nora believe she was alone. Then she stood, slowly, like uncoiling history itself. You all need to leave, now. Grandma, Mom whispered. No, she said, steel in every syllable. You don't get to rewrite this one. Vanessa stormed out first, heels striking the hardwood like accusations. My parents followed, murmuring about legal challenges, but no one looked back. And for the first time, their absence didn't feel like a wound. It felt like freedom. When the door shut behind them, it didn't echo. It sighed, like the house itself had been holding its breath and could finally exhale. I sank into Grandpa's armchair, letting its worn fabric hug me like it used to. Grandma didn't say anything for a while. She just stared at the empty space where her family had once stood, and fractured. I should have known, she murmured eventually, but I kept hoping they'd see the good in you, that they'd come around. I didn't respond. I didn't know how to forgive someone for choosing silence when I needed them to speak. But Grandma did speak, now when it mattered most. I found something, she said, standing up and disappearing into the hallway. When she returned, she was holding a dusty metal box. It was dented in one corner and locked with a rusted clasp. This was his, she said. He kept it under the bed. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were pieces of me I thought had been lost. The ribbon from my first science fair. A photograph of me squinting through a microscope. Postcards I had sent from research camps. And beneath all of it, my old notebook. The same one Grandpa gave me when I was 12, after Vanessa told me I'd never be pretty enough to matter. My throat tightened. Each page was filled with scribbles and diagrams, dreams sketched in blue ink. Grandpa had bookmarked pages, written notes in the margins. Brilliant, curious, keep going. I closed the notebook and held it to my chest. They tried to erase me, I said quietly. Grandma nodded. They tried, but David never let them. I looked around the room and saw it differently now. It wasn't a place of loss. It was a vault of hidden truths. And I'd only just found the key. That night, I stayed in the house. I wandered into the room that used to be Grandpa's study and found his favorite telescope still pointed toward the sky. Next to it sat a small, unopened letter. It was addressed to me. I opened it with shaking hands. Nora, if you're reading this, I hope it means you stood your ground, that you didn't let them twist your story into theirs. I know it hurt. I know what they said, what they took. But pain can sharpen us. It can refine us. You were never ordinary, and that terrified them. Don't let their fear shape your future. Let your vision do that. The lab is just a beginning. You, my little scientist, you are the legacy. I sat there for hours, letting his words settle in every part of me that had once begged for recognition. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had chosen to forget me, to make me small, to dim the light because it didn't match theirs. But Grandpa had never been afraid of that light. He'd protected it, cultivated it, and now he had passed the torch to me. Later that week, I visited the lab. I hadn't seen it in person, just architectural sketches and lists of equipment Grandpa had prepared in secret. It was stunning. A modern, glass-walled facility nestled on the edge of the city, surrounded by green space and humming with potential. Inside, I found the dedication plaque. The Wexler Innovation Center for those who listen deeper. For those who ask, why? In honor of Nora Wexler, my granddaughter, my compass, my scientist. I traced the letters with my fingertips. This wasn't just a building, it was a reclamation. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to earn anyone's approval to exist. I had already been seen, fully, completely, by the only person whose vision ever mattered. I didn't return their calls, not the first week, not the first month. I watched as unknown numbers blinked on my screen like echoes from a version of my life that no longer fit. Emails came, some pleading, some polished with legal language. A few even pretended nothing had happened at all. I didn't respond, because I wasn't interested in reopening a wound they never acknowledged creating. Instead, I poured myself into the lab. The first thing I did was paint the front wall. It had been a sterile grey. I made it sunflower yellow, Grandpa's favourite. The second thing I did was hire 2 people who believed in impossible things. Tara and Micah, friends from university, fellow misfits turned visionaries. We didn't start with ambitions. We started with questions. Real ones, messy ones. What if small farms could survive climate shifts? What if kids in underfunded schools could access real science, not just outdated textbooks? What if the world stopped ignoring the quiet minds in the back of the room? We called it the Curiosity Charter, and it became our compass. But none of it was revenge. I didn't build to spite my parents. I built to heal from them. And I think that's where the real shift happened. For years, I thought the only way to win was to be louder, brighter, unignorable. But now, I saw the truth. I didn't need their validation. I needed my own permission. There were moments I could have lashed out. When my mother emailed asking for a conversation as a family, I could have sent a picture of the lab's grand opening with a caption that read, "You're not on the guest list." But I didn't, because I didn't need to be cruel to reclaim what was mine. One day, Grandma sat beside me at the edge of the property, watching the interns plant native flora in the courtyard. "They still don't get it, do they?" she asked. "No," I replied, "and maybe they never will." She turned to me, her voice low. "Would you ever forgive them?" I thought about that question, not because I didn't know the answer, but because it was the first time someone had truly asked. "I don't think they're sorry," I said. "They're just scared now that I know who I am." She nodded slowly, then smiled, not out of pride, but peace. "You're not just David's legacy," she said. "You're your own." 6 years have passed. The yellow paint on the lab's front wall has faded a bit, sun-kissed and worn, but we've kept it that way, like a memory that doesn't need to be perfect to be powerful. The Wexler Innovation Center now stretches across 2 buildings, with solar panels on the roof and wildflowers in the garden. Every window reflects more than light. It reflects the choice I made, to grow toward the sun, even when the soil was hostile. I still think about Grandpa sometimes, not in the way that aches, but in the way that reminds. I think of the way he handed me that notebook behind the barn and said, "Write the things they don't understand. One day, the world will." And the world did. A few weeks ago, we got a handwritten letter from a high school student in Montana. She built a low-cost water filtration system using an article from our open-source archive. She signed the letter, "Thanks for giving science back to the weird kids." I cried when I read that, not because it hurt, but because it healed. Sometimes I wonder if Vanessa ever walks past a bookstore and sees our name on a paper about soil regeneration. Or if my mum ever scrolls past an article and recognizes the girl she once told to be less intense. But most days, I don't wonder at all. Because this life, this legacy, was never built on their permission. It was built on truth. And the truth is, I wasn't the forgotten one. I was the forged one. Made in the quiet, sharpened by lies, powered by the one person who dared to see me exactly as I am. A little scientist, a grown woman, and someone who changed the world, not by becoming someone else, but by finally becoming herself.